I'm Steve Highsmith. Soon, new men and women in blue will be patrolling Camden County and mainly Camden City. This action comes as Camden's crime increases, its police force shrinking amid budget problems, and years of other state methods that haven't worked. Now this new initiative is to try something different. Disband Camden's police force and start all over with a mostly new county-wide force focusing first on Camden City. With me now is John Williamson, president of the Camden Fraternal Order of Police and vice president of the New Jersey FOP, and Camden County Freeholder Director Louis Cappelli Jr. Thanks for being here, both of you.
Thank you.
So, Freeholder, let's begin with where we are. What is this new force looking like today, and when's it going to get there?
We have just begun the hiring process, Steve. We received $10.5 million from the state of New Jersey in startup costs. So we've begun the hiring process. We're doing background checks on the over 1,000 applicants that have applied. We've identified those who can become part of the force as quickly as possible.
You have a few hires already.
We did. We've started with 10 intergovernmental transfers from the existing Camden City Police Department. They're overseeing the administration and the hiring process at this time.
And a handful of officers, about 7 new officers?
Yes, 7, yes.
And then you want to get up to what? So at the end of March or early April, how many officers will be in this CCP Metro Division?
By the end of April, we'll be somewhere around 250 officers. By the end of the summer, we'll be at 401 police officers.
And of the 401, how many of them will be on the street?
There will be 313 officers assigned to community policing. Right now, there are only 90 officers assigned to the streets in Camden City. We will increase that number to 313. They will form partnerships with the residents of the city to engage in full community policing.
So spread over 3 shifts, 313 officers.
That is correct.
And that means about under 100 officers will be where? In Blackwood or where?
No, all throughout Camden City. This force will be limited to the city. This is the Metro Division. They will be patrolling the neighborhoods of Camden City.
Between 313 and 401, those officers are going to be where?
Oh, I'm sorry. They will be superior officers working in Camden City, but they will have superior officer duties.
John Williamson, what's your reaction to this, about what you've heard about the few hires that they've made and where they're headed?
Well, I think something should be made perfectly clear here. One, there's not at any point going to be 300 officers on the street at one time.
No, spread over 3 shifts.
Right. I think that, you know, the county is doing what they believe is right, but in essence, our position has always been there is no need to disband the current police department, just build on what we have. We're currently at about 250 officers, so if you add 150 officers to that, you can be right at that number.
But they're claiming that with the roughly 250 you're at now, that the budget is $65 million. Their new budget with 401 will be $60 million. Therefore, they could afford to do what they're doing. They can't afford to do the current structure your way.
Well, the budget is where it is now because the current police administration has run the budget up through overtime, paying people shift differential that they weren't entitled to make. So our position is that this is a created budget crisis to substantiate the need to move to a county model.
Well, regionalization or countywide models is something that planners have been advocating for a long time. Why would that not work here?
Well, it's not necessarily that it wouldn't work, and I don't think we have an issue with shared services, true shared services. But this isn't a true shared service. This is a takeover. So they're doing something that is unprecedented, hasn't been done anywhere in the country. You're experimenting in the most dangerous city in America. What happens if it doesn't work?
Well, I guess we'll ask that question when we start seeing data that says it may not be working. But let's get back to some of what Mr. Williamson just said, and that is that this is a takeover, that this is something that the citizens of Camden didn't vote for. This is not what they want. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's something that the governmental body in the city of Camden has voted to do. They were elected to lead the citizens of Camden. They recognize that there is a public safety crisis in the city. The murder rate in Camden City this past year was higher than the murder rate of Honduras. The poverty rate is through the roof. It's one of the poorest cities, not only in the nation, but also in the world. We
part
need
of that
to
is
change.
Camden County's responsibility, is it not? In the sense that these are artificial borders around Camden, and 77 or fewer people living in Camden now, and yet all around Camden are these other communities, most of them doing much better than Camden. And yet, Camden's, the county's waste goes to Camden. There's a jail in Camden. There are things that people don't want in their neighborhoods that are in Camden City. So how do you, as a countywide freeholder, view the responsibility of the county to address and help Camden City residents?
Oh, first of all, we think we have to address the issue of public safety. We can't get to creating jobs, improving the environment in the city without improving public safety. There's been a lot of great progress. Campbell Soup has stayed in Camden. We work very closely with them to make that happen, together with the state of New Jersey. Cooper Hospitals is expanding. There's a new medical school in Camden City. There's a lot of good things happening, but the public safety crisis could act as a roadblock.
So explain to me briefly, why is policing going to be better starting in late March and early April than it is today?
Simply because we're going to have 401 police officers in the police department rather than the 260, which is there right now.
But if the current department had agreed to significant concessions that would have come close to what the budget model is going to be for this, why not go that way?
Well, that was considered, and frankly, the union had about 5 years to do that. Before they began speaking to the county, they were negotiating with Mayor Red in the city. They did not make the necessary concessions.
Did you make the necessary concessions?
We made the necessary concessions, but what the city continued to do was every time we got to a benchmark of where they said they needed to be, they continued to raise the bar till it became unreasonable, and ultimately it's not the union's choice, it's the members' choice. We present.
But is there a credibility problem here with the department as it exists today when 30% of the department calls out sick on any given day? The number that we have been told repeatedly, that is 6 times higher than what the norm is.
And that number is false. There is not a 30% call out rate. And if I were an administrator and I had a 30% call out rate, I would fire the people that were calling out. The call out rate actually is 4%. What they're using is, again, inflated numbers. They're using the people who are out on holiday and vacation in conjunction with people who are out injured on duty and on long-term medical ailments, and they factor them in with the daily call-out rate.
Let me take a break here. We'll continue this in a moment. More with John Williamson and Lou Cappelli, and coming up, an update on who will be running the state of Pennsylvania next on NBC 10 at Issues.
You're watching NBC 10 at Issue.
Mayor Camden City Fraternal Order Police President John Williamson and Camden County Freeholder Director Lou Cappelli. Mr. Cappelli, let's pick up. Do you disagree with that new interpretation of the 30%? Or do you think...
Absolutely. Listen, if there's 240 or 250 police officers on the police force, and every day 30% are not showing up in the most dangerous city in America.
But do you think that they're not showing up for a lot of different reasons, not just sick time, not just calling out sick?
No, it's mostly sick time, calling out sick.
Yeah, you guys obviously have a disagreement there.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you something about this. You're not taking 50% of the officers from the existing department, because to do so would require that the existing collective bargaining agreement be continued.
That is correct.
So you're taking 48 or 49% up to that?
Up to 49% of the qualified officers.
How do we know that the officers you're getting are not just someone's favorite, that these are not being people discriminated against based on age or any other reason?
Well, the interview process is going to include independent panels, retired judges, representatives of the State Police Chiefs Association of the state of New Jersey.
Do you think a 50-year-old police officer is as good a shot as a 30-year-old police officer?
Absolutely. If they're a qualified police officer currently working in the city of Camden, we will do our best to hire them.
Mr. Williamson?
The Freeholder Director should answer. The officers who transferred over already, did they go through that same interview process?
No, they did not, because by necessity, we had to transfer officers over to begin the startup of this department, so we could not interview them, but they were highly recommended by the leadership of the police force.
Okay, and that same leadership, the Freeholder Director has accused the union of wanting to preserve the status quo, but they are in fact preserving the status quo because the
with Chief Thompson and everyone else,
Chief Thompson and his administration, they've been in power for 5 years running the police department. When they first started running the police department, we were at roughly 390 officers, between 350 and 390. We were up to 393, almost 400.
But 2 years ago, the government took half his police force away.
Exactly.
Right, but from 2008, 2009, and 2010, when we were up to 393 officers, we jumped from number 5, which was not good on the most dangerous, but it wasn't number 1 or number 2. All 5 years.
You raise the question, why do you have confidence in the management that has been there the last few years to be the management going forward?
Chief Thompson is an outstanding chief, and when he had the resources to operate back when Joe Cordero, our current consultant, was the head of the Division of Public Safety, there was a significant decrease in crime in Camden City. We know he's a proven leader. With the proper resources, he will get the job done.
You have metrics for him that by the end of year 1, he's got to have crime down to such and such, homicide, assaults down by a certain number? Are those kind of metrics going to be in place? A results-oriented leadership? Well,
yes. I'm not going to have a specific matrix, but we want to see less victims of crime in Camden City, number 1. And number 2, we need the citizens to feel safe.
Well, let's get back to the cost of taxpayers then. So the citizens of Camden are basically paying for this force and the state. Correct?
That is correct.
And nowhere else in the county are people, or county, the other 36 municipalities, people living in there, are they going to have any kind of property tax or any other kind of tax besides going through the state to pay for this?
They will not. They will not.
If their municipality decides to join this force, however, they then will.
That is correct. It's a voluntary participation model, and we already have a few other municipalities interested. Actually, I've had calls from around the state of New Jersey concerning this model.
You're paying your officers about 33% less overall counting pay, benefits, everything. The total bill that you have to pay is $120,000, $180 in Camden City right now. Correct?
That's correct. The salaries are going to be
You're going to get the
same.
Officers going to want to go out there and risk their lives?
Absolutely.
Kind of
Absolutely. We have about 1,100 applicants, 160 from Camden City. Again, the salaries are the same as what they're receiving right now.
Well, but not counting all the bumps and the differentials and all those
but
other
some
things
of
that
the
are going on.
things that caused the bankruptcy of the city, correct?
Well, the salaries are not the same. The salary scale, if you look at the salary scale on its surface, it is the same. But if you look at the steps to get there, it's not the same. But let me go back to the one thing about the administration and the leadership. This administration, this police administration, this police leadership has more lawsuits, grievances, and unfair labor practices filed against them in the history of the 141-year Camden Police Department. So,
have any been founded?
Some have been founded. I believe at this point now, one lawsuit was dismissed by a judge, but
a lot's still up in the air.
But a lot are still up in the air. So when you take that into consideration, look at the liability that has been put on the city, the financial burden for the potential of those lawsuits being settled, and then moving forward, the county is putting themselves in the same situation. So if you're going to...
I'm going to have to move on. I need one quick gut check answer from you guys. Is Camden going to be safer in April than it is today?
No.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, I will follow you over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks and hope to talk with you or your representatives again as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. Next, what will happen with school funding, taxes, state stores, and the lottery depends in part on how politically weak or strong Governor Tom Corbett really is. An expert on Pennsylvania politics, next on NBC 10 Edition.
You're watching NBC 10 at issue.